Okay, this is a quick review of CSS. So we'll open a new document. We'll rename that css.html. Alright. And have this open in Atom. So I start my HTML element. Closing tag, I have the head element, I have the body element. Okay, the style tag goes inside the head element. It looks like any other element. It's got an opening tag and a closing tag. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and put the title in because it's complaining at me. This is CSS. Okay. So inside this style tag is like a different language. So far everything is HTML. You have opening tags or HTML elements. You've got opening tags that can have attributes, and inside of those tags you have the children of that element. Okay. Now once we're inside this style tag, it's like a different language. So we can have a CSS selector. This tells the browser what HTML elements to select. This is saying find any element with the class attribute, that's what this dot means, and then if that class is foo, apply these styles. Okay, now this is a very simple style. It's common background color. In CSS, this is the name of the CSS property, its background color. The style is this entire definition. It's all of the individual properties. Okay, so if I had border and made that solid 2px and black. Okay. So this first part before the colon is the property name. The second part is the value. There's a colon in between them. Afterwards there's a semicolon. That tells you that's the end of the property. Border. Now this one has three separate values, three arguments to this property. Each of those arguments are separated by a space. That's important. In JavaScript, in functions, arguments are separated by a comma, but it's different in CSS. Okay, so we're going to make an element with a class attribute. That's that dot. It's a shortcut for the dot, and then foo. All right. So all the elements that actually show up on your page are in body. Okay, so we're going to make an element in body. We'll make a div, and we're going to give it a class foo /div. Alright, and let's go ahead and let's save it and see what we have first. That's one thing I haven't been showing you guys, but you need to do when you work on this stuff is you definitely need to work in small incremental changes. As soon as you do anything, test it and see if it's working. So open it up, pull over, see how it looks. Okay, so we've got looks like this black line up here. Why is there a black line? Well, we've got a div in here. We can right click and inspect the element. So there's our body tag. It highlights the whole page. We've got the div. It's highlighting that thing. So that's our div. Okay, so it must not have any height or width, but the border is still showing. So we specified a 2-pixel border. So this is the top 2 pixels and bottom 2 pixels. So this should be 4 pixels tall. If we add a height and width, we can see that. Height, 250 px, width 400 px. So the width property, you give it a number and then a unit. The px unit is a pixel. A pixel is the smallest part of your monitor that displays a color. Each pixel is made up of three light bulbs, basically. There's a red, blue, and a green. And when you show the red and the blue and the green at all the different intensities that you can, you get all the when they all the spectrums of light combine, you get all the different colors you can see on a computer. Okay, so that's commonly called RGB. Right? So this width is saying for that smallest unit of viewable color on your monitor, we want 440 of those to be the width. We'll make it easy to go 400. And then the height will be 250 pixels. Okay, so let's save it. So now we should have a height and width, so we should see this color red inside. Sure enough. See, that line got smaller. That's because half of it moved all the way down here. It was just the border of the div. Okay, so you do small incremental changes and then refresh the page. And if something breaks, you stop and you go back and fix it and try to figure out why it broke. Okay, I skip steps a lot of times because I'm trying to move fast through this material so you guys don't get bored. Alright, so I've got another div here. I'm going to call that foo. I save it, refresh. Sure enough, we've got another red box in here. This line looks like it's thicker than the other two, but it's actually the top one, the top border of the bottom div and the bottom border of the top div combined, and so it looks thicker. Okay, so I can also do these styles. All of these are CSS properties. They're style properties. Each line here. Now what I can do is if I use the style element instead of, or the style attribute instead of the class attribute, style allows me to directly modify the CSS of this element. Directly modify the styles of the element without adding anything to this style tag up here. Okay, so I can do background color, and then I can pick virtually any web color. I can do RGB. If you use the hash symbol, you can do a hex number for the red value, green value, and blue value. Or you can do 2 red values, 2 green values, 2 blue values. Or you can do the name of several web colors. So there's a set. If you go web colors on Wikipedia, all of these are acceptable values to any color property in CSS. Background color or border color. So like border here, we picked black. We could do a different color there. So we can make this fire brick instead of red. Capitalization doesn't matter here. It can be upper or lowercase. And then for this div, we remove the foo class and let's make the background color something else, like medium aquamarine. Okay, now we made a small change. We had 2 of these divs with foo classes. Now, I made 2 changes. I changed the color of red slightly, so that should be fine. But then I added a style attribute here instead of the class attribute and did background color medium aquamarine. So I save it, reload and see what we have. Okay, so one of them disappeared. We can right click and inspect the element. Okay, we have a div here, but we also have our other div. This is the same thing as before. It doesn't have any height or width, so it looks like it's invisible. And we don't have any border on it either. Okay, so this was the problem we ran into before. So in the style tag, I'm specifying more of these individual styles from the CSS. So this style attribute, I'm adding individual CSS properties. Alright, so here we need a width. Let's do 100 pixels. And a height of 250 pixels. Okay, so that should give us something in our div. Okay, we don't have a border. We can add a border. Let's make it inset. Let's find a color. Do deep sky blue, and then we're going to do 2px. Alright, so we save this, we reload, and we have this border. Okay, the last thing you need to know is there are multiple ways to select elements. So if I duplicate this element, I'll just save real quick, see what it looks like. Sure enough, we get another one. Let's remove this style attribute and say we'll give it an ID instead. The ID attribute, they're supposed to be unique. You should never have two HTML elements with the same ID. Classes, however, you can use any number of elements can use this class. So I can have multiple foo classes. So I'll make another foo one down here. But this ID should be unique, and it's just some text. And it has to start with alphanumeric or alphabetical character, and then it can have hyphens in it or numbers, but it has to start with an alphabetical character. So unique. Now because the dot usually means classes, so we need the pound sign. That means anything with the ID unique is going to have these elements. See, our ID here is unique. Alright, and this can be any name. We just picked unique to let you know that it should be unique. And I can do background color. Find another color. Let's do this here. Okay, and then I need to add a width and height so we can see it. Okay, so here's our first div. We use the class, and we can put that class on multiple elements. So anything with this class is going to have these CSS properties. Under the style tag, the style element of the head element. So we create Css Selector, look for all elements with the class, which is the dot, and a class named foo. Apply all of these styles to any elements you find like that. This CSS selector is look for an element with an ID attribute, and that ID attribute is set to unique. That's the name we give it. It could be anything here. Alright, if you find that element, apply these CSS properties. Or we can do it inline. In this case, we use the style attribute. Now, attributes are always attribute name equals and then quotes, and then the value is in quotes. Essentially, we're writing a whole bunch of lines of CSS in here. That's why it's important to have the semicolons and have everything organized well. So this, as you can see, the more styles you add, it gets really tough to see what's going on. Especially if, like, say I had some text in here. So I've got some text in there. If I'm looking at this code, all I see is this junk here. It takes me forever before I can even see that there's some text in there, right? So it's a lot cleaner if I have it like this. I can see, oh, there's a class foo and then some text. All right, so that's one of the reasons you have this separate area to write these styles. The other reason is for reusability. I can apply this foo class anywhere. So I can just, if I define a whole bunch of these CSS properties, I can just pop it on one element and I'm done. Okay, so those are the two main reasons you would want to use this style element and define your own CSS separately from doing it inline like this. Okay, so that's a quick recap of CSS. So hopefully that helps clear up some confusion.